The Miami Hurricanes are heading into week 2 of spring football practices. The situation is going to change and offer certain players an opportunity to step up and create separation. Here's why.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday Eve. We're almost there. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. On this loaded episode, we have an update on one of Miami's top recruiting targets. Actually, maybe more than just one update on a few different Miami recruits, as the month of March is a big one for laying those foundations. We've already gotten 2 verbal commits within the past week or so. In other news, you may have noticed there's a lot of gossip out there concerning Miami's QB1. I'm not big on the tabloid stuff, but enough people have asked me about it. Ask and ye shall receive. We at least have to talk about it today, but what I'd much rather talk about are the goals and expectations heading into the second week of spring football practices. The team has been off this week for spring break. They're back at it. Green Tree and the indoor practice fields next week. We get this question from Tony in South Miami, who says, hey, what do you need to see from the Canes in week 2 this coming week? Okay, so first thing, why this is a really important week that Miami is heading into is I don't know the exact timetable on when the full pads are going to be on, but they're going to be ramping up the contact. And I think at some point next week, we're going to see the full pads come on. And that changes the situation out there drastically because there are certain players. I'm going to mention a few, and I know I'm leaving a few out. So don't take this to mean, hey, these are the only guys that thrive in physicality. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there's only a handful of guys who thrive when, hitting is live and all that. But there are certain players, namely Zaquan Patterson, who is a different animal when the pads are on because that's his superpower, his physicality, his hitting. And of course, you don't want too much hitting in practice for obvious reasons. But when the pads come on, Zaquan Patterson is someone who I believe will and has an opportunity to take his game to a next level in practice. Cameron Bobby Pruitt is another one at linebacker who really shines and thrives when there's contact. Elijah Lofton on the offensive side of the football is another one because so much of what makes Lofton special is his ability to block, his ability to shed tackles when he has the football in his hands. So players like that are, I think, really going to take it to the next level and be more noticeable when the pads are on. I'm also anxious to see because sometimes you get a look at like the true freshmen and the younger guys, and, they can really kind of shine something extra when they're wearing, shorts and no pads. But then once the pads come on, the truth is really told, okay? Because there are certain freshmen that I thought had a really good first week. And I'm not saying they won't thrive when pads come on, but I'd like to see it. Some of the younger defensive backs, Chris Ewald had a really good first week. Amari Wallace, same thing. Dylan Day had a good first week. And you know what? Dylan Day is another one. I'd put him kind of in that Zaquan Patterson category as well. I think Dylan Day, one of Miami's young safeties heading into his second year, I think that's someone who can really create more havoc and separation once the physicality ramps up out there. I'm anxious to see how guys like Malachi Toney at receiver, Josh Moore, he's got the build of someone who will probably thrive when the contact ramps up because Josh Moore is every bit of 6'4", I don't know, probably in the 215, 220 pound range, really mature body type for a true freshman. Also anxious to see how good he's going to end up being as a blocker. Dalen Upshaw is another true freshman who's looking good so far. Are these guys going to shine as much when the contact ramps up? Going back to the defense, Xavier Lucas packs impressive size, was a physical corner last year at Wisconsin. Is he someone who's really going to create even more separation once the pads come on? The line of scrimmage battles are going to look more defined and more heated when there's more contact out there. And of course, we know Miami's offensive line is going to be arguably the strength of the team this coming season, as you would expect with the development and the players that they have on that O-line. How's Miami's D-line going to match up with them? Are we going to see Justin Scott looking as disruptive? A true freshman like Hayden Lowe, we'll talk more about. Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor. How are these guys going to perform against Miami's offensive line, which, like we always say, like Mario Cristobal always says, iron sharpens iron. Like they get to go up and practice against one of the best offensive lines in the country. And, this one, when I talk about quarterbacks, this isn't really about the physicality because quarterbacks don't get hit in practice regardless. They rightfully so protect the QBs. But heading into the second week, I want to see if we see a little bit more separation and even more consistency from Miami's backup quarterbacks. There also is the question out there of, is Carson Beck going to start to do a little bit more in the second week? That is yet to be seen. Coming off his elbow injury, bring him along slowly. I'm fine with that. But, how big of a step is someone like Luke Nickel going to take from his first week of spring practices into his second? Is he going to take even another step in the second week? So those are the big things that I would look for in the second week of spring football. And again, I don't know exactly the schedule of at what point they're going to be in full pads, full hitting, but I'm sure the contact is going to ramp up in the second week. And that's really when you start to separate the men from the boys. And hopefully Miami's got a team full of men. We get this question from, this was pretty much an identical question that was asked to me by Bucks Canes in Georgia and also Steve in Port Orange, Florida. What's the biggest and most notable difference between week one of spring football last year versus this year's week one? Says, I understand there's a lot of new faces and a lot of changes ongoing, but what's the biggest thing that immediately stands out between last year's team and this year's team during the same window? I'll give you a few observations, having been out at spring a year ago and being out at spring this year. The first one is, not in like anybody's control right now, but I'll give you a big difference between last spring and this spring. A year ago at this time, we already had Cam Ward out there doing Cam Ward things in practice. I mean, Ward, arrived in Miami before the spring, was fully healthy. Obviously, it's not Carson Beck's fault that he's not healthy, but we haven't been able to see quarterback one throwing this year. And then last year at this time, Cam Ward was already making my jaw drop. You already saw the connection he was developing with Xavier Restrepo, especially. So, this year when it comes to the quarterbacking, we've been watching, Emory Williams and Judd Anderson and Luke Nickel, none of which are expected to start because obviously that is Carson Beck's job to lose this year. So that's one of the first things that stands out. But some positive things for this year, I think from top to bottom, Miami's athletic profile and physical profile is a little bit higher and a little bit deeper than it was a year ago. And we've seen that ramp up year by year during the Mario Cristobal era. The defensive backfield, completely different this spring compared to last spring. If you guys remember the shows that I was doing a year ago in March, Miami at that time barely had enough healthy defensive backs to get through practice. Like that room was so thin, especially in the spring, because Damari Brown wasn't healthy last spring and Robert Stafford wasn't healthy. I think there were a few other corners that were not fully healthy in the spring. So like they barely had enough guys to have a healthy room. Whereas this year, you've brought in 5 transfer DBs who are all out there practicing, and you already have, I think, more or at least as many guys coming back from last year, and 3 new, I think 2 new freshman defensive backs who are out there practicing right now. And also the other thing about the DBs this year is they're all pretty big. I mean, a year ago you had some shorter DBs. This year, I think everyone but one of them is over 6 foot tall, and the only one who's not is Charles Brantley at 5'11", 5'10". So the defensive backfield is a lot bigger and a lot deeper than it was last year at this time. And the same with the running back room. Running back was another one last year in the spring. most of Miami's scholarship running backs were not healthy at this time. Damian Martinez hadn't arrived yet at this time last year. Mark Fletcher was still recovering a year ago. He's healthy now. And A.J. Allen, who's no longer at Miami, but he was not healthy during the spring last year. So it was basically Chris Johnson, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey. Miami had to use Elijah Lofton, a tight end, a lot to kind of fill in that running back room and a couple of walk-ons. Like they barely had enough running backs to get through practice last year at this time, whereas this year the room is loaded, and we're getting to watch Fletcher and Lyle and Gerard Pringle, a true freshman, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey. Those are your 4 scholarship running backs. Terrell Walden is a walk-on running back who's a standout guy and a good player. So it's night and day when it comes to the running back room. And then as you guys alluded to it in the question, new coaches we're looking at. I mean, watching Will Harris for the first time, coaching at Miami, Damian Lewis, Corey Heatherman. So yeah, there are some differences, some good, some bad, but mostly good compared to spring football at this time. All right, so we got more of you guys' questions to answer. And by the way, if you want to ask a question for the show, become a Locked On Canes insider. Click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes insiders chat. Getting questions about some gossip pertaining to one of Miami's players. Is this going to cost us the season? Oh my God. Is Miami going to go 5-7 because of this off-field drama? Stay locked right here to Locked On Canes. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Folks, I just started using Monarch Money, and the all-in convenience stands out. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. I realized just how much I was spending on things like food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. We're also proudly brought to you by Factor. This is helping me achieve my nutritional goals, and I'm so thankful for what Factor is doing. If you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto Plus. Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of planning. I've tried their Protein Plus meals. They were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off and use code LOCKEDONCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball. It's March, ACC tournament wrapping up, NCAA is coming up. Isaac Shade and Andy Patton are going to have you ready to fill out your brackets with confidence. I was dreading this question coming up, but enough people asked it and enough people are talking about it. Locked On Canes insider, many of you want to know, hey, there's this rumor going around that Carson Beck and Hannah Cavender broke up. Is there any truth to that? Okay, as far as like the any truth to that part of it, I haven't dug deep on this one, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. This is not Locked On TMZ. This is Locked On Canes. But I saw some chap made a very detailed TikTok video with like the evidence as to how they said. I don't know who has this kind of time on their hands to track another man's relationship the way that this TikToker did. There's a rumor that they may have broken up. And listen, I guess people would only really care about this because they're both high profile athletes. Because guys, I mean, when I was in college, I mean, how many times did you have relationships and breakups? Life goes on. You keep doing what you're doing. I mean, college athletes go through things in their personal lives all the time. We had a couple of players on Miami that sadly dealt with, passing away of parents over the last couple of years, which I would think is a lot more impactful than breaking up with a girlfriend would be. And they got through it, by the grace of God. And obviously, losing a family member is a lot more serious than a breakup. And so, I keep seeing the way people are reacting to this. And I can't even confirm if they're no longer together, by the way. It's really none of my business. But the way that I see Miami fans reacting to this, some of you are like, oh man, he's going to be completely out of it mentally, or maybe he'll decide to transfer again in April because he came down here for her and he's going to leave to go. So I definitely don't expect that to happen. But then I see other people saying that, hey, maybe if this relationship is behind him and he's single now, he can completely focus on football. I mean, Mickey from Rocky once told Rocky Balboa, "Women weaken legs, Rock." So maybe now all the focus is on football for Carson Beck. But in reality, no matter what may or may not have happened here, folks, we are 5.5 months away from the start of the college football season. I mean, he's got plenty of time to put any personal drama behind him and focus on Notre Dame August 30th and all the games that come after that. Plenty of time to put that behind him. So the rumors are out there. I have heard them, but folks, college football players go through a lot of things in their personal life. This is nothing unique. This is nothing new. This young man wants to win. This young man wants to cement himself as a first-round draft pick for next year. There are plenty of things more important than the drama that may or may not be going on in the personal life. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. Let's move on back to physicality on the football field. We get this question from the 954. Hey, has everyone seen the pictures of Hayden Lowe, Miami's freshman edge rusher, in just shorts? He looks like he's a fourth-year senior already. So for the video viewers, you see what we're talking about here. This is an 18-year-old Hayden Lowe. I mean, he's jacked, which you like to see. He's every bit of 6'5", 250 plus pounds. And I think what impresses me most is how developed his back is. Because listen, when I was big into my weightlifting days, and I was at a time when I was in college, a little bit after that, it's easy to focus more on the pecs and the abs and stuff. Maybe skip a few back days and leg days. I don't think Hayden Lowe is skipping any leg days and skipping any back days. I mean, that young man is ready to get after it. But if you were an opposing quarterback and that dude is running right after you, you're saying Hail Marys at that point. So yeah, and Hayden Lowe not only physically developed, as you can see there for the video viewers and for the audio listeners, the young man is jacked at large. He's not only physically developed, but he seems to be a football junkie, and he's getting that hands-on coaching now from Jason Taylor. So I think Hayden Lowe is going to be a really good one at the University of Miami. We get this question from Dan, who says, hey, when's the next transfer portal window? And who are some of the potential names on Miami's list? So the transfer portal is going to open April 15th, and it's going to be open for about 2 weeks. And that's right after Miami's spring game. Hurricanes have their spring game on April 12th. 3 days later, the portal is going to open. I like the timing of the spring portal because Miami will have had 5 weeks of spring football practice for the coaches to evaluate their roster, figure out who the essential players are and maybe who the non-essentials are. And some of those non-essentials will probably figure it out for themselves. I may not get playing time here. I might want to find, somewhere else where I can play. And then, of course, those 5 weeks are going to give Miami's coaches time to figure out which positions do they need to add players in. I really can't give you specific names right now until I know who from other schools are going to be entering that transfer portal, but we can give you positions. I could see the Hurricanes looking to add one more outside wide receiver. particularly somebody who's got big time experience and has, put up full seasons of numbers, rather than guys you take flyers on. I think they want a proven outside receiver, in my opinion. I could see Miami looking to add maybe one more safety. Miami is a little thinner at safety than they are at corner. I could see Miami adding another linebacker and potentially another defensive tackle. So those would be, in my mind, the positions Miami could look to add. And also the other one, maybe add a running back, but you don't need someone who's starting caliber. So it's a little tricky because you'd need to add a running back who understands, like, I'm probably going to be a third stringer here at best, but they need the depth, and maybe I want to be at Miami. So, it was like a couple years ago when Miami had to add Lucius Stanley through the portal, who came from a smaller school to Miami, and he played kind of a plug and play sort of role. So something like that. So those, I think that's 5 spots, possibly running back, defensive tackle, safety, receiver, 4 spots. My math is not so great, but those are the position groups that I would look at Miami possibly adding someone in the spring transfer portal. And I'd hate to speculate this early on specific names, but believe me, in less than a month, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. A significant update on a top Miami Hurricanes recruiting target. What is that update, and how did I somehow get entangled in it? You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. It is tax season, my friends. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who's going to find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Been answering questions on this episode from our Locked On Canes Insiders chat. If you want to become a Locked On Canes Insider and unlock exclusive access, you want to click the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours with breaking news, recruiting scoops, show updates, one-on-one questions and answers. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. So before we get back to a few of your questions, we've been talking a lot this week about Canon Pickett, top Miami recruiting target, offensive lineman from the Tampa area, Miami legacy. He's the son of Booker Pickett Sr. He's the younger brother of Booker Pickett Jr. I was told Canon has grown up a Miami fan. He's been all about the U. He had a visit to Clemson last weekend. Apparently, the visit went really well for everybody who was there. It even prompted Steve Wiltfong to log a crystal ball in favor of Dabo Swinney and Clemson to land Miami legacy Canon Pickett. I am here to fight back, folks. I am here to fight Dabo. Me and Mario Cristobal in one corner, Dabo Swinney in the other. So we talked a lot about Canon Pickett, who, by the way, is going to be visiting Miami this weekend. He's got a 5-on-5 event down in South Florida. He's also going to visit the University of Miami campus. So Miami, if Clemson did indeed gain some momentum for Canon, Miami is an opportunity to gain that momentum right back. And how about this, folks? The power of Locked On Canes. Canon Pickett last night tuned into our episode. He made this X post about it. He also made an Instagram post about it where I think he asked the coy question, is he going to pick it to the U? Another Pickett at the U. So here we go, folks. We're doing our part here on Locked On Canes to recruit the top players and Canon Pickett. And Canon, thank you for the shout out. This seems like a great young man. We love the family. We've had Booker Sr. on the show before. I've met, his older brother on Miami a handful of times. So we're big fans of the Pickett family, and hopefully the Hurricanes can turn that momentum back in their favor and get a great visit coming up this coming weekend. So we appreciate the shout out there from Canon Pickett. We also get a recruiting question that asks, hey, any idea where Miami is with Kenai Pepe and Breck Koleje, the two stud offensive linemen? Well, two of these stud, because the whole offensive line at IMG is full of studs, but two of these stud offensive linemen at IMG. Yeah, folks, we've talked a lot about Pepe and Koleje in recent weeks. I would favor Miami for both of them. And I did notice our guy Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U had both of them, Koleje, who's an interior offensive lineman, Pepe, who's an offensive tackle. He had both of them in his mock class 1.0 for Miami. Our guy Brian Smith was at IMG's Pro Day a couple of weeks ago, and his conversation with Pepe and Koleje both led him to believe that Miami is probably the front runner for both. And of course, Miami has had recent success with offensive linemen out of IMG Academy. You see the way Cece Maui-Noa, who went there, is positively thriving at the U, heading into his third year, which might end up being his last year because he could be a projected first-round pick after his third season. So I'm very optimistic as to where Miami stands with Pepe and Koleje, and I would love to land both of them, especially in this case, Pepe, because I'll be honest, I'm not feeling great about Jackson Cantwell, and I know that's the number one recruit in the country, and it's always been an uphill climb for him. But it seems like others have kind of risen above Miami in that regard. I think Oregon is a big player for him, and then his hometown or home state team at Mizzou, they don't want to let him leave the state. So if Miami cannot get the top recruit in the country who happens to play offensive tackle, there are plenty of other really, really good options out there, including Kenai Pepe. So we're going to keep our eyes on players like that. Wow, this is a tough one from Tampa Lou. Fun question, he says. Maybe fun for you, Lou. He says, would you rather have last year's defense or Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback this year? I mean, would I rather be stuck between the rock or the hard place, or both, I guess. So if you had to choose one, would you rather have this last year's defense with Carson Beck at quarterback, or Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback with this year's defense? Oh my gosh, can I plead the fifth? Do I have to answer that one? I would say I am legitimately stumped. I think I'd still rather have Carson Beck at quarterback. I'll leave it at that. But Tampa Lou has asked an impossible question. Let me know what you guys think, because I prefer not to speak on that one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below between that awful hypothetical. Let's see. Do you think, Sammy wants to know, do you think that if Luke Nickel gets more first-team reps and starts the spring game, does Amari Williams or Judd Anderson hit the portal? I don't really think anybody hits the portal. I think that they're all pretty locked in. I don't know if I see Luke, just because of how young he is, starting the spring game. That's probably Amari Williams' starting spot to lose for the spring football game. We'll have a clearer idea once we get closer to that. I mean, we still have 4 weeks of practice before we get to the spring game. And also, speculating on who's going to leave is tough, right? I mean, there are definitely rewards to staying, right? And our guy Malik Rozier talked about that, how he had an opportunity to leave Miami right before he ended up being the starting quarterback in 2017. And he was so thankful that he stayed at Miami. The grass is not always greener on the other side, and you never know what opportunities life is going to bring to you. But then on the flip side, this day and age, it's so easy to transfer now with the transfer portal, and you don't get punished, losing years of eligibility the way that you used to and having to sit out, that if you want to go somewhere and play, you go. But yeah, I don't really have any reason to believe at this moment that any of Miami's, backup quarterbacks are going to transfer. So hopefully they all stick around. We get this question, Donno, with the new ACC TV deal, Is it only you get incentives for football viewership, he says, or because he says a few of the lower football teams have decent basketball teams. So it's not really the ACC TV deal. It's what the ACC is now doing to spread the money around. They've got the success initiatives and the brand initiatives, and those do include basketball, right? I would imagine football has a bigger impact on that, but the brand initiative, which is your television ratings, that does include ratings in football and in basketball. The success initiative, how much do you win? How far do you go? That includes football and basketball. So it's definitely in your best interest to have as good of a football team and as good of a basketball team as possible. Like, one of our YouTube subscribers asked me a question last week, like, Donno, if we're going to pump more NIL money into basketball, is that a waste because you're taking money away from football? That I want the football team to be good? And my answer was, no, we want both of those teams to be good. Like, I don't want to take money away from football. I believe the basketball NIL is going to come separately, and it's not taking money out of the football NIL. But it's in your best interest for both of those teams to be really good. That's why Miami went out and hired Jay Lucas. That's why, by all accounts, Miami wants to invest more resources in the basketball program to be a Final Four level team again, the way that they were just a couple of years ago, because the new ACC initiatives, if your football team and your basketball team are really good, you're going to benefit from that financially. All right, we'll answer more questions on my mailbag column this week at canescounty.com. I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Larry Bluestein is going to join us tomorrow, our boy Blue, on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.